about social media briefly. How many of you use Twitter? Few? Not that many. Okay. How many use Facebook? Few. How many block Facebook from their corporate internet? The large corporations. Bunch of them, huh? Do you know 90% of the large companies I talk to block Facebook? You had raised your hand, sir. Do you take the mobile phones away from your users? No? Because what I tell people is if you block Facebook and you don't take their mobile phones away, they're getting on it anyway. One of the examples that I did in a very large financial company that I presented to their board, I asked this question to the board, and they said, no, we block Facebook. I said, what do you do? I said, well, it's a waste of time. And when I asked them the fact, do they take their phones, they said, no. And I go, let me show you something. I went on my computer and did just a search of this name. There were 1,000 posts within the last 4 hours of employees that were doing it. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, if you're blocking it, you got to take their phones away, right? So my prediction on it is, the reason you want to pay attention to Twitter and social media, it will be predominantly how we receive news in the future. That's how I kind of leverage it. Let me give you an example. So you can sort by a variety of different things, but here's the most powerful thing that I kind of do. John Chambers, our CEO, presented at an RSA conference, the security conference in California. And right after that, we're heading to Mexico together. And he asked me the question, as soon as he finished, he goes, well, Carlos, how did I do? He's from West Virginia. That was a West Virginia accent for those of you that didn't catch it, right? And I said, John, you did as usual, but you did very well. But let me do something. And I went on my phone and I typed Chambers RSA. And here's what I got back, right? They gave a lot of different results. And the first one says, my favorite RSA keynote was by John Chambers, Cisco CEO. He radiated intelligence, awareness, enthusiasm, confidence, and optimism. And then I went, job security for another week. Right? And he said, wow, that's really interesting, but is that all they can do? And I said, no, they can do much more. So we went in and clicked on a tiny URL, which brought us to a web page, right, that had a much more in-depth article. The power of Twitter is really more as a news source. And for those of you that are not using it, I ask you, sign up and try it. 90% of the people that have Twitter have never posted a Twitter message. 90%. Very few people are the ones that are posting. And as a matter of fact, it's Pareto principle even worse, because 3% of the people generate over 95% of the post on Twitter. But it's an incredible information source, and it's an incredible way to capture things. So let me fast forward. I'm in Mexico now with our CEO. We have an incredible event. We meet with President Calderon and everyone there and, kick off a bunch of memorandums of understanding. And we're supposed to have dinner with Calderon and the cabinet on Thursday evening, and they never show up. So needless to say, we're a little bit concerned we did something offensive. The First Lady did show up towards the end of the night and goes, I'm sorry, Carlos, they couldn't come. We had a problem. And, that's all. They couldn't come. I said, okay. So we kind of felt sad and said, all right, maybe it was something we did and they just blew us off. Next morning, we turn on the news and read the paper. The swine flu broke out. We're in Mexico City, most populated area. The swine flu out. And all of a sudden, in Mexico, you have to travel with security. So all of a sudden, we're leaving on Friday, and we're thinking, well, how do we get out of the country? Are the airports open? Are this open? And the security team is starting to investigate. And I pop on my phone. I do a search on swine flu, see people that are posting, and I engage them in conversation. Hey, is the airport open? Put a post out there. I get a bunch of responses. Yes, it is. Do you know if flight XYZ is out, is going to leave, and it's on time? Yep, it's on time. We're going to do everything. Are they taking any precautionary measures medically on, doing bigger searches, temperature, or any? No, they're not. So I'm going back to all the security team and go, hey, airport's open. Let's avoid this road. The flights are okay. We're not sure. And they're looking at me like, how do you know this? Right? They're doing it through their back channels and everything else. I had more information faster than they could ever get. And for me, it's really indicative of the power and the reach of some of this technology. So for those of you that are not doing it, if there's one thing maybe I can convey is try it, experiment with it, play with it, because you'll never be able to leverage unless you take that first step. And you don't have to post anything. Let you off the hook. You don't have to, no one cares what you're going to say. So just start reading people that you care about, news sources and everything else, and that becomes my news source. And I say it very funnily because I post a lot and I really don't think anybody cares what I have to say. So, you know, kind of more indicative for myself. Also, just so you know, the Pope is doing this, and if it's good for the Pope, it should be good for all of us, right? You know, he's doing Facebook, and he's really encouraging a lot of the priests to do that kind of stuff. And, you know, the statistics on this are really crazy for Facebook, right? More than 5 billion minutes are spent each day. More than 1 billion photos uploaded, pieces of content. I mean, this is big. And they're actually, I'm going to skip the video, but one of the, I think, the real important things for you to do, for those of you that have large corporations, is establish the guidelines. You know, people that block the thing never establish any guidelines for it. And I think it's more important to say, it's a technology that's here. I'm not going to block it. It's a phenomena greater than our company. But how do you leverage what's out there? And what do you tell your employees to do? What's acceptable behavior? What's not acceptable behavior? Right? And this is where you move into the whole zone of really approaching it in a very different light. The other thing that is always interesting for me in social media is who owns this? Is it PR, IR, corporate, finance? Who owns it? You know, and I ask this question to many, many companies, and they all look at each other and go like, I don't, do you think it belongs to human resources? You know, or should it be finance, security? Who owns it? So if there's one lesson besides the technology, if you're a large corporation, embrace the technology, put some policies out there and figure out who should own it, because the power is really there to change the world. Let's very briefly talk about mobility. I'm not going to do justice because I don't have the time. But, you know, this is the most, you know, to quote Joel here, this is the most astonishing technology story of our time, right? It's pervasive. It's going to be everywhere. There's billions of people that are connected today. It's going to continue to connect in new and innovative ways. You know, this is an interesting one where she owns a mobile phone even though she has no electricity in her home, right? An amazing device. You know, she buys time on a neighbor's battery to charge her cell phone. And all of this is fascinating, but the point being is we're all going to be connected around the world at some point in the time, right, where it's going to be constant, and the connection is going to be mobility in any shape, flavor, or size. Matter of fact, this slide shows that mobile internet users are already outnumbering home internet users this year. And then it gets even more interesting when you start applying smartphones and data to it. Look at the amount of packet consumption, you know, between 2006 to 2015. I mean, it's grown 450 times. That's why technologies like femtocell and some of the other things are really emerging, is to address this vast, you know, technology issue. How many of you are familiar with augmented reality? Anybody? A few? I'm not going to cover much other than tell you and show you a real quick video of what it is. But augmented reality is combining the real world, right, with a layer. And what this is a military group that you're taking an unskilled worker, putting on a pair of goggles on them, right, and through GPS positioning and compass and a variety of other things, you're teaching them how to replace a complex piece of equipment. So what you're seeing here is, you know, a reflection that's saying, use this wrench, here's the generator, this is where you put it, this is how you turn it. Right? And all of a sudden, you can get a totally unskilled worker, put him in the field in something, and automatically make them as knowledgeable as someone that's been doing it for a long time. This is going to come in all shapes and sizes. It's going to be very sophisticated applications, like you're seeing that here. There are other applications for healthcare that are quite interesting, where you'll go, you know, I have a dietary restriction of having high cholesterol, and I can go to the supermarket and with my mobile phone, turn on an app, point to the UPC codes, and it gives me a red or green light whether I should buy this product or not based on my dietary restrictions, right? And I'm naming a couple. You can buy real estate. You point to a building. It tells you what's available. You want to find a Starbucks. You point it like this on your phone. It'll tell you directions to move, on and on and on and on, right? But the merging of the real world with this augmented reality world is here. and coming. You know, gaming. Talk to Hi-Rez. Great example there, right? In seeing that example. Gaming to me, especially in December, is going to change dramatically. You know what's happening in December? There's a few game consoles coming out where you're going to eliminate the controller. Everything is going to be gesture and voice activated. So if you're playing a game that's driving, you're going to be driving like this, right? If you're playing a boxing game, you're going to be boxing, right? No controller. You're going to be saying open, close, right? It's the beginning of interfacing to machines in a very, very different way. I'm also a firm believer that gaming will be the future of how we learn, right? If you think of technologies, and Halo was mentioned, I'm a Halo player, right? Is you bring thousands of people onto a domain and you get playing on the same virtual world simultaneously, right? 8, 16 people at a time, depending on what game you're playing. There's all sorts of really interesting educational opportunities that exist there, right? So gaming is extremely powerful and something that I think you have to pay attention to. The virtual world, I talked about it briefly. I think it's going to be a real interesting option for replacing meetings. You know, we're having this meeting, and I hope we're here for many, many years, but there'll be options, Tino, to bring this meeting everywhere around the world, not only having your audience here, but have people join from different parts of the world. Instead of 1,000, you might have 20, 30,000 that join, and they get an experience just like being here. They'll be able to interact. They'll be able to do a variety of different things, and that's kind of in the works. Cloud they talked about, so I won't mention. December also, 3D TV coming. Very intriguing. Combine the virtual gesture-based gaming with, with the 3D. You start doing all sorts of really intriguing stuff. You'll be able to take virtual tours and a variety of other things in the future. And, AirSage was talking about some location-based services. I think that is an extremely hot space, and you're going to get the heck marketed out of you if you so elect, depending on where you are. Starbucks would love to, give you a coupon, or somebody else would love. But I think there will be a lot of really interesting applications that will result of that beyond advertising and finding friends or finding colleagues or a variety of other things. The best location-based services is in Japan, and it's a dating service. Docomo has, and they've had it for 2.5 years. What they actually do is you put in your profile, in my case, of the ideal woman. If she's 50 feet from where I am, it'll ring us both. It works. So let me just conclude on just a couple of real quick things to consider. There's an incredible contribution revolution going on where every day millions of people are giving and contributing to things for free. And it's really revolutionizing a lot of the economies in a lot of industries. Wikipedia is one of them, right? What would Wikipedia do without this user contribution? And what you end up doing with things like this is it's not only Wikipedia, you have a lot of other different types, like software code through Firefox and Linux, YouTube, Flickr, all of these are things. So I guess the question I would have for you is, as you're developing your businesses, is there a possibility to leverage user contribution? Right? That is something you should definitely be considering in what you are doing. And there's a number of companies like Threadless and Rise. Threadless is going to top $40 million this year, and I think they have 6 employees. I think they have 5 full-time and 1 part-time. Right, because they're leveraging user contribution. Rise is another example of that. The other one that I just want to hit, and I think it's really, really important, is, let me just fast forward because I have one more concept I just want to tell you, and then I'll conclude. The last one is all about broadband. And, if you're going to be an innovation state, I think the acceptance of the fact that broadband plays a critical role in economic development, and particularly in really being competitive and innovative into the future. So we did this thing with a couple of universities and did a broadband quality. And we looked at 2 things. Right now, when you look at Facebook and YouTube, the speeds are high, but they're still low. With the new speeds that are coming tomorrow with visual networking, a lot of the video, it's going to really pump up the demands. So we went there and compared, a few different things like download throughput, upload throughput, and particularly latency, which is very, very affecting of video. and came back with these things called thresholds. So you need to have a threshold of 30 to meet today's demands and have a threshold of a minimum of 50. And then we went back and did actually some reports and did it by country. The blue line is where the U.S. stands in 2008. I'm happy to report that in 2009 we moved the ball in the right direction. So we moved pretty well. We had probably a very good change in that area. But look at Korea. Korea moved from 38.25 to 65.99. So tremendous moves in that area. And last but not least, I just wanted to show you Georgia, where Georgia lies in the scope. I think you're doing better than the middle of the pack, so that's good. But I think from a legislative perspective and focus area, this is clearly something that you should really focus on to be more towards the left. And closing, here's my contact information. If anybody would like to reach out to me in any way, easiest way is probably just email or send me a Twitter note or Facebook note. Happy to respond. And last but not least, this was my goal. It's all about embracing change. I hope you got that from Tom. You're hearing it from me. Spend time searching for new technology and what's available. Experiment with it, because ultimately if you experiment, you learn. If you learn, you ultimately leverage it. And, bottom line is we're living in exponential times. So thank you very, very much for your time. And congratulations on a great meeting.